So what truly became of him? Detective Kobayashi's thoughts drifted, suggesting the culprit either hid within the alley's encircling tenements, or perhaps was one of the very tenants living there. A path across the rooftops, from the second story, might have offered escape, but an inspection showed the front windows' fixed grills were undisturbed, showing no sign of movement. And the back windows? In this heat, every second story lay wide open. Some even sought comfort, cooling themselves on the clotheslines, making escape through them seem quite a struggle. Such was the prevailing thought. A brief conference then unfolded among the investigators, debating the next step. Ultimately, they decided to split, searching the neighborhood house by house. Still, with only 11 tenements, front and back, it hardly seemed a burden. Simultaneously, the house itself was re-examined, every hidden corner, from beneath the floorboards to the dusty attic. Yet, the findings brought no answers, yielding nothing new. Instead, they seemed only to deepen the enigma, further clouding the truth. For the owner of the candy shop, just one door down from the old bookstore, had been out on his rooftop, playing the shakuhachi, from dusk till now. He sat in a place where he surely couldn't have missed a single thing happening at the bookstore's second-story window, from start to finish. Readers, the threads of this case were weaving into something truly intriguing. Where did the culprit enter? Where did they slip away? Not from the back door, nor the second-story window, and certainly not from the front. Did he never truly exist, or simply fade into the air like smoke? But the mystery didn't end there. Two students, brought before the prosecutor by Detective Kobayashi, offered statements that felt strangely unsettling. They were students from an industrial school, lodging in the back tenements. Either seemed the type to spin tall tales or to lie. Yet, their collective testimonies only twisted the case into an even more perplexing knot. To the prosecutor's quiet inquiries, they each responded, more or less, with the following words. Around 8 o'clock, I stood before the old bookstore, idly flipping through a magazine on the outdoor stand. Then, a soft sound drifted from somewhere deeper inside. I instinctively lifted my gaze towards the shoji screen. It was closed, yet the lattice section was open, and through that slight gap, I saw a man standing. But my gaze met his, closing of the lattice almost simultaneously, a fleeting moment, so no true details, of course. Yet the way his obi sat, I knew it was a man. And besides being a man, did anything else catch your eye? His build, perhaps, or the pattern of his kimono? I only saw him from the waist down, so his exact build remains a blur. But his kimono, I remember, was black, perhaps faint stripes or a kasuri pattern. But to my eyes, it appeared a solid, deep black. I too was looking at books with my friend, and like him, I heard the subtle sound and saw the lattice door close just the same. But that man, I'm certain, was dressed in a white kimono, pure white. No stripes, no patterns, just white. Isn't that peculiar? Unless one of you has made a mistake, there is absolutely no mistake on my part. And I too speak no falsehoods. What did these strange, conflicting testimonies from the two students truly imply? A sharp mind, perhaps, has already glimpsed the hidden meaning. Indeed, I too felt the quiet dawn of understanding. Yet, the courts and police seemed not to dwell too deeply on this crucial detail. Soon after, the dead woman's husband, the bookseller, returned home, the news heavy on his shoulders. He was a delicate young man, unlike the typical image of a bookseller. Upon seeing his wife's still form, his spirit seemed to shrink, so fragile. No sound left his lips, but tears fell, a quiet, broken cascade. Detective Kobayashi waited for his grief to settle, then began his gentle questions. The prosecutor added his voice, a quiet echo. But to their profound disappointment, the owner claimed no knowledge, no clue as to the culprit. He wept, murmuring, "She, of all people, harbored no one's ill will, not like this." His own quiet investigations, too, confirmed it wasn't the clumsy hand of a thief. Thus, examinations into the owner's past, his wife's identity, and other facets commenced. But finding no suspicious shadows, and holding little sway over the story's core, I shall omit them. At last, the detective questioned him about the fresh, numerous wounds upon the deceased's body. The owner hesitated. A long, drawn-out moment of silence. Then he confessed softly that he had inflicted them himself. Yet, when pressed relentlessly for a reason, his answers remained veiled. No clear explanation ever came forth. However, it was known that he had kept his night stall open throughout the entire evening. Thus, even if those were wounds from abuse, the suspicion of murder could not justly touch him. Perhaps the detective shared this thought, for he pressed no further, letting the moment hang. And with that, the interrogation of that night drew to a temporary close. Our names and addresses were noted down, a quiet formality. Akechi's fingerprints were taken, a silent imprint left behind. As we finally embarked on our journey home, the night had deepened, past 1 o'clock. If the police search was thorough, and the witnesses spoke only truth, then this was truly an unfathomable case. And later it became clear, Detective Kobayashi's relentless inquiries yielded nothing. The case remained frozen. All witnesses were people of trust. No suspicion fell upon the residents. The victim's hometown was investigated too, but nothing out of the ordinary was found. At least, as far as Detective Kobayashi could only be deemed completely inexplicable. I heard this later, but even on that light switch, which Detective Kobayashi brought back as the sole clue, to his dismay, nothing but Akechi's fingerprints were found. Perhaps Akechi was flustered at that moment, as many fingerprints were left there, but every single one belonged to him. The detective concluded that Akechi's prints. Dear readers, as you delve into this tale, do you not recall Poe's Murders in the Rue Morgue? In short, do you not imagine the killer to be something other than human? Indeed, I considered that possibility myself. Yet, such creatures are unlikely. Firstly, a witness claims to have seen a man. Moreover, if it were an ape, and it would have been seen by others, and the marks on the victim's neck, even a coiled snake. Anyway, Akechi and I, on our way home that night, chatted excitedly about many things. To give an example, it was something like this. You know, don't you, the Rose Delacourt case in Paris? That inspired Poe's Rue Morgue and Leroux's The Yellow Room. That bizarre murder, still a mystery. I was reminded of that case. Tonight's incident, with no trace of the culprit's exit, seems quite similar to that one, doesn't it? Akechi remarked. Indeed, it is truly strange. People often say that serious crimes, but I firmly disagree. Because, as you see, such incidents do occur. I don't know if I can do it, but somehow, I feel a strong urge to unravel this mystery. And so we said our goodbyes. Then, turning into the alley, I remember Akechi's retreating figure. His vivid striped yukata stood out sharply. Well then, about 10 days after the murder, I paid a visit to Kogoro Akechi's lodging. During those 10 days, what did Akechi and I do? What did we think? What did we conclude? Readers, you will grasp all of this through the conversation that unfolded. Until then, I'd only met Akechi in cafes, and visiting his lodging was a first. But I had asked for his address beforehand. I stood before what seemed to be a tobacco shop and asked the landlady if Akechi was there. Yes, he is. Please wait a moment. I'll call him now, she replied. She said this, then walked to the stairs visible from the shop front and called Akechi's name loudly. He was renting a room. Then, with a strange, "Oh," Akechi came creaking down the stairs. Spotting me, his face surprised, he said, "Ah, please come up." I followed him up to the second floor. However, as I casually took a step into his room, I was utterly astounded. For the room's appearance, I knew Akechi was eccentric, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. In short, his 4.5 mat room. Only a small patch of tatami was visible in the center. The rest was a mountain of books. Along the walls and sliding doors on all sides, books piled up almost to the ceiling. These literary embankments pressed in from every direction. There were no other furnishings at all. It made one wonder how he even slept in this room. First of all, there was no space. One careless move and the book embankments might collapse, burying you beneath them. It's terribly cramped, I'm afraid, and no cushions. Forgive me, but please find a soft-looking book and sit there. I pushed through mountains of books, finding at last a place to rest. Overwhelmed by it all, my gaze wandered, lost in thought. I felt compelled to explain, just for a moment, the man that is Kogoro Akechi, the master of this peculiar, winding room. Though our acquaintance is but recent, I know nothing of his past, nor how he sustains himself, or the purpose guiding his steps through this life. Yet, it's clear he's a kind of wanderer, with no set profession. If forced to label him, perhaps a student. But then, he's a remarkably strange student. He once said, "I am studying humanity," and that phrase still echoes. At the time, I didn't fully grasp its meaning. All I know is his profound interest in crime and detectives, along with a terrifying wealth of knowledge. His age is near mine, surely not past 25. He's on the leaner side, I'd say. As I mentioned, he has a peculiar sway of his shoulders when he walks. Not like some boisterous hero, but rather, if I may evoke a strange figure, like Kanda Hakuryu, the one-armed storyteller. Speaking of Hakuryu, Akechi resembles him, from his face to the very timbre of his voice. For readers who haven't seen Hakuryu, imagine a face among those you know, not conventionally handsome, but with an undeniable charm and a look of profound genius within it. Only Akechi's hair is longer, tangled and disheveled, and while talking, he often scratches at his already wild hair with his fingers, as if to make it even more unruly, a peculiar habit. His attire seems of no concern to him, always a cotton kimono and a worn heko obi. It's good of you to visit me again. We haven't met in a while. What about that D-Slope case? It seems the police still have no leads on the culprit, do they? Keiichi said this, scratching his head as usual, scrutinizing my face. Actually, I came today to speak a little about that very thing. I began, unsure how best to start the conversation. Since then, I've been thinking about it a lot. Not just thinking, you see, but I've even conducted a real investigation, like a detective. And truth be told, I've reached a conclusion. I thought I'd report it to you first. Oh, really? That's quite something. I'm eager to hear the details. I didn't miss the subtle blend of disdain and relief in his eyes, as if questioning what I could possibly have discovered. Yet, that very look spurred my hesitant heart onward. With renewed vigor, I began to speak. I have a friend, you see, a newspaper reporter. He's quite close with Detective Kobayashi, who's in charge of that case. So, through this reporter, I was able to learn a lot about the police's progress. But it seems they're struggling to form a coherent investigative plan. They are quite stumped. Of course, they're doing various things, but nothing concrete has come up. That light switch, remember? That's a dead end too. It turns out only your fingerprints were found there. The police believe your prints probably covered the killers. Knowing the police were struggling, I felt even more determined to investigate. So what do you think is the conclusion I've reached? And why do you think I came to tell you first, before going to the police? Anyway, since the day of the incident, something has been bothering me. You remember, don't you? How two students gave completely different statements about the color of the suspect's kimono. One said black, the other said white. Even if human eyes can be unreliable, mistaking black for white, such opposites, is strange, isn't it? I don't know how the police interpreted it, but I believe both statements are correct. Do you understand? It's because the culprit was wearing a striped kimono, black and white. Like a yukata with thick black vertical stripes, you see. The kind you often find in inns as rental wear. So why did it appear pure white to one and pure black to the other? Because they looked through the slits of a shoji screen. At that exact moment, one's eye was aligned with a white stripe visible through a gap, while the other's eye was aligned with a black stripe. It might be a rare coincidence, but it's certainly not impossible. And in this particular case, there's no other way to explain it. Well, now we know the pattern of the culprit's kimono, but this only narrows the search. It's not a definitive lead yet. My second line of reasoning comes from the fingerprints on that light switch. Through my journalist friend, the one I just mentioned, I asked Detective Kobayashi to meticulously examine those fingerprints. Your fingerprints, to be precise. The results confirmed what I'd long suspected, that my theories were true. Speaking of which, do you have an inkstone? Could you spare it for a moment, please? And so I proceeded to show them a small experiment. First, I borrowed the inkstone. I gently inked my right thumb and pressed a single print onto a sheet of paper from my pocket. Then, I waited for that print to dry. I re-inked the same finger, then carefully pressed it over the first, altering the angle slightly. Suddenly, a distinct double fingerprint appeared, its lines clearly intertwined. The police believe your fingerprint overlapped the culprit's, erasing it completely. But as this experiment reveals, that simply isn't possible. No matter how forcefully it's pressed, since a fingerprint is formed by distinct lines, There should always be residual traces of the earlier print between them. If both fingerprints were entirely identical, pressed with not a single deviation, then their lines would perfectly align, and the latter print might indeed obscure the former. But such precision is virtually impossible in reality, and even if it were, the conclusion for this case would remain unchanged. However, if the killer truly turned off that light, their prints must surely remain on the switch. I speculated the police might have overlooked an earlier print, nestled between the lines of your own, so I investigated it myself, yet found not the slightest trace. Simply put, that switch bears only your fingerprints, from first touch to last. Why the antique bookstore staff's fingerprints weren't present, I'm not entirely certain. Perhaps the lamp in that room was left on continually, never once switched off. My dear fellow, what tale do all these facts weave together, I wonder? This is how I've come to piece it all together. A man, dressed in a coarse, striped kimono. He was likely a childhood friend of the deceased woman, perhaps driven by unrequited love. Knowing the bookstore owner would be out with his night stall, he attacked the woman while she was alone. With no trace of cries or resistance, she must have known the man intimately. And so the man, having cleverly achieved his dark purpose, extinguished the lamp and departed, hoping to delay the body's discovery. Yet the man's crucial misstep was his ignorance of the shoji screen's open lattice, and when, startled, he closed it, his silhouette was spotted by two students who chanced to be outside the shop. Afterward, the man stepped outside for a moment, but then a chilling thought dawned. His fingerprints must have been left on the switch when he turned off the lamp. No matter what, these prints had to be obliterated. But to slip back into the room through the same method, that was too dangerous. At that moment, a brilliant idea sparked within him. His plan, to be the one who found the murder scene. By doing so, he could naturally switch on the lamp with his own hand, thereby removing any suspicion regarding the earlier fingerprints. And who would ever suspect the discoverer of being the culprit? It was a double advantage, and so, with a perfectly innocent facade, he observed the police's every move. He even had the audacity to provide a testimony, and the result? It played out precisely as he had envisioned. 5 days passed, then 10, yet no one came to take him away. With what silent gaze did Kogoro Akechi receive this tale of mine? I had anticipated him, perhaps midway through my narrative, to show some alteration in his expression, or to interject with a comment. Yet to my profound astonishment, his face remained utterly devoid of any expression.